Okay, our next guest is, hold on. Here we go. Our next guest is Matt Beienburg, Director of Education Policy at the Goldwater Institute. Matt, thank you so much for your time today. How you doing?
Doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I wanted to talk a little bit about a local story, and then we'll get into more national implications of what the government thinks of parents as domestic terrorists and stuff. However, here in St. Louis, there is a school district called the Rockwood School District, and they're having their election for the Rockwood School Board on April 5th, and there's a woman who's running. Her name is Izzy Imig, who we talked to a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And she was, Matt, she was born in Iraq, right? She went through 3 wars. And she got out, she married an American soldier, became a citizen, took the oath and all that, and now she's running for the school board. And this woman, Matt, when I tell you, she has more appreciation for the freedoms in this country than half the people who live in this country and all of the Democratic Party.
We've seen lots of cases like that of people here who don't have an appreciation for it, and contrasted with somebody who, as you're describing there, absolutely who is full on and for the principles of this country. And so, I think the contrast there is incredible, and it's around the country that we're seeing folks who are getting involved running for school board who do believe in America and believe in the principles of American democracy.
That was going to be my next question. So nationwide, you are seeing more patriots and more freedom lovers running for school boards, because we need them, Matt. We need them.
Yeah, we've seen states, there was a huge push in Texas, some successful elections. There have been efforts where, typically these school board elections have been dominated by the teachers' unions in years past. They're often held sort of off cycle. The unions mobilize their members. They're the ones that sort of control who ends up getting elected. And what we're seeing is the grassroots, the parents have said, enough is enough. We're going to get involved. We're going to take back our schools and the education of our kids.
We were talking to someone on the same subject, the same topic, on how who dares to tell a parent what's what on what their kids are going to learn in school, and that they don't have a right to know and they don't have a say in it. I guess the whole thing is in the article you sent us about teachers' curriculum transparency. I mean, I would think, Matt, call me old and crazy, but there should be some sort of syllabus sent to every parent about everything that my kid's going to learn in school.
You would think that it would be pretty easy to find out what's being taught. And that's essentially what there's this huge push now around the country for curriculum transparency, to essentially say most of these bills, and now there are multiple in Missouri as well, saying very simply, have the schools, the public schools, post on their websites a list of the actual materials that are being used. Because what we're seeing is schools are smuggling in content like the New York Times 1619 Project in all 50 states. And they're usually doing it not as an official adopted material, but just teachers, principals, curriculum coaches push it in front of the kids. And if a parent goes and asks them, hey, is this part of your curriculum? They'll just look at them and say, nope, it's not part of our official curriculum, even though we're showing it to your kids. So these bills would give parents the ability for the first time, without having to jump through a bunch of hoops or fill out expensive public records requests or essentially beg for this information, to go online and see what the information is. And the teachers unions and the media are bending over backwards to try and block this effort and keep parents in the dark.
And back in the day, Matt, I mean, my parents, granted, were both educators, but I remember if I didn't know something or if I didn't know what was coming up in a class, my father would yell at me, it's on the syllabus! Look on the syllabus! What the hell's the matter with you? And, I can't believe that doesn't happen anymore. How do you not know, even as the student yourself, what you're going to be taught for the semester or the year or whatever? It makes me crazy, Matt.
Yeah, and part of it is we've actually seen that teachers are going to things like Google, YouTube, Pinterest, right, pulling a lot of information just off of the internet. And so in a lot of these cases, it's a sort of mismatch of all kinds of content that hasn't been vetted. Some of it's obviously quality, and some of it, again, something like the 1619 Project or its partner curriculum materials that gets pulled in there and shown to kids is something that is not being disclosed, to the parents. And so these bills essentially say, look, they're not even going that full step of saying you must decide on day one everything you're going to teach. These bills say as you go, you need to make sure that then you are disclosing it so that parents are able to engage with their kids. So when they're making an enrollment decision, they can look at, well, what are the schools near me teaching, right? So to actually have this information. And it's not even to prevent teachers from having that flexibility or that adaptability. There obviously are cases where they might see see some resource that they want to use throughout the year. These bills still let them do it, but they say if you're going to use it, you have to be straightforward with parents and disclose that, and to put that on your website so that parents can see that. They can, communicate to the teacher if they then have concerns about it. They can see it when they're making those enrollment decisions.
School choice has to be a big part of everything you're saying, Matt. I mean, there are people who don't have that choice. They live within the school district's maps, and that's where your kids go, and that's it. School choice would certainly help out this whole situation, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. School choice, but as we've seen during the pandemic, there's all sorts of different options. Even things like private schools, home schools, charter schools, all these different things are, to differing degrees. We've seen that the percentage of kids doing homeschooling has virtually doubled as a result of the pandemic, right? So even if you are stuck with essentially your local district school, you've got a lot of families who look at that and say, actually, maybe I'm not comfortable with this local school near me because they are pushing, all these examples of a political or racialized agenda instead of focusing on core academic principles. So that's where, Missouri, again, has put out a few bills, a latest one, SB 1225. It was just introduced a week or so back that would say, again, you're going to make it so that the parents are able to see what is being taught in the schools.
This is a very radical idea I have, Matt, but I'd like to run it by you. But a conservative type of school, PragerU. I mean, obviously, you know what PragerU is, right?
Yep.
They should. I've been on the rampage to have Prager High, a real, truly Prager high school. Where the kids learn conservative values and patriotism, and how about math and science? You know what I mean? Instead of all this other crap. I mean, we have kids right now, Matt, who are growing up, a generation growing up, experts on gender fluidity, but they can't carry the one.
Yeah, and we've actually seen, several in places like Arizona, networks of charter schools, for instance. The Great Hearts Academies are focused on classical Western tradition, American Leadership Academy, these schools that are very much steeped in saying we're going to cultivate an appreciation for classics, for American history, and obviously the contrast is very sharp with some of these schools that are unabashedly saying, we are a social justice factory, pushing the brand of anti-racism of Ibram Kendi, which explicitly calls for discrimination. So I think that contrast is very sharp, and we've seen it around the country, an explosion in the growth and interest in these programs that actually are going to teach real content, real, valuable academics, as opposed to fringe left-wing politics.
The whole 1619 thing, I mean, to me, I know I'm biased. I'm the conservative guy on the radio. I get it, Matt. But it seems to me just a hatred for this country. I mean, what is it that you want? What is equity exactly? There's opportunities for anybody. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you are. You have the same opportunity as everybody else to succeed in this country.
Yeah, and I think the 1619 Project, you mentioned, Real Clear Politics did a great investigation on it a little while ago about how it was being used in the classroom, and they were spotlighting teachers who were excited to use the 1619 Project in finance classes to be able to link capitalism to slavery. I mean, that's the kind of messaging that they're trying to use in these resources, and so. Again, taking up what should be valuable time when kids are struggling in the basics of math and reading, and instead pushing this sort of ideology and indoctrination on them. So absolutely need a return to quality content, and that's where these curriculum transparency bills are so crucial, right? Because they say no longer can the schools do this in secret, push it into the materials getting in front of the kids without having to essentially own up to that to parents and the public.
In Real Clear Politics, just to full transparency, they're not some crazy right-wing nutbag site, right?
I mean, they're the sort of go-to when it comes to politics, election. I mean, they are just amalgamation of articles and resources from all over. But yeah, their investigative series, they've dived into CRT, into the 1619 Project. We hear from the media, CRT is not taught anywhere in our schools. It's not in K-12. Even though the teachers unions themselves had explicitly called for it, and Real Clear Politics is one of the many sites to go in and show, we have superintendents in places like Detroit explicitly saying they've infused it into their curriculum. We've got teachers themselves filling out surveys saying that they teach it or that they think it should be mandated to be taught. So the media, the teachers unions have definitely thrown in on this narrative of trying to gaslight parents. And so that's, again, why it's so critical to put parents back in the driver's seat, get legislation like the curriculum transparency bills, whether it's SB 1225 in Missouri or any of these bills around the country, to help get that in law so that parents are able to, again, help guide their students' education towards something that's academically valuable.
We're talking to Matt Beienburg, Director of Education Policy at the Goldwater Institute. Something is easy, and I know, again, I'm the old fart. I get it. But kids don't even learn cursive writing anymore, Matt. How do they sign a check?
Well, it's definitely, we've seen a lot of things get dropped off of the curriculum, and usually, we hear, well, there's not enough time, or there's not enough funding, or there's not an ability to do this. And then the schools turn around, and we see these instances of the schools paying, in some cases, tens of thousands of dollars to bring in people like Ibram Kendi, again, from how to be an anti-racist. These speakers that are pushing this radical CRT type of agenda, and the schools somehow manage to find money to buy these equity audits or bring in these speakers when they're essentially then saying we're not able to do other basic instruction. No time to learn cursive, but plenty of time for CRT and 1619 project. I'm not buying it, Matt. How about you? It seems a little hard to believe, but that's kind of what we're seeing.
I got to tell you, my kids are now, my youngest is 21, so I'm done with the public education system. But I shudder to think if this stuff was happening when my wife and my kids were in school, my wife would be arrested on a weekly basis at school board meetings, I'm telling you, because she would have lost her mind. Rightly so, I think. Yeah, and we've seen a lot of this energy among parents, and it's been sort of heartbreaking to see as these parents have shown up to school board meetings and even testified on similar transparency bills around the country, saying we've had questions about what's being taught and sharing their stories. That saying, literally, I went to the teacher, I asked to see what's being taught, I went to talk and told, nope, go talk to the principal. The principal tells them, nope, go talk to the school board. The school board, everybody gives them this runaround instead of taking accountability. And so that's where, again, the transparency says, let's give it back to the parents, not make them beg to know what's being taught and to have a voice. All right. Matt Beienburg, Director of Education Policy at the Goldwater Institute. How do we find out more about the Institute and you yourself there on social media, Matt? Sure. We've got our website, goldwaterinstitute.org. We've got a whole slew of resources on this idea of academic or curriculum transparency. I have a social media, M. Beienburg, on Twitter, but definitely recommend folks check out the Goldwater Institute's resources on this. Get involved with the local bills in Missouri to help support curriculum transparency and help give a voice to parents. All right. Matt, great to have you on. Thank you so much. Oh, can you do me one last favor? That bill you keep referring to, the SB something, can you email Ken the text on that? I'd love to read it. Sure. Happy to do so. All right. So it's Ken at newstalkstl.com. Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me on. Thank you. All right. Matt Beienburg, Director of Education Policy at the Goldwater Institute.